Welcome back to my YouTube channel, and in this video I'm going to be showing you 9 things that you wish you knew about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And if you're new here, I really hope that you learned something new in this video, and even if you're not new, then same goes for you. And before we actually get started, make sure you subscribe to this channel if you're not, so that you don't miss any new important videos, lessons, and tutorials. To start this video off, I'm going to show you how you can add captions to any pictures that you might want to add it to. So I'm going to actually copy this URL so I can generate random images and I won't have to use a specific one. And to add the caption, we're going to have to use two elements. The first one is going to be figure. Inside of it, we're going to create the image tag, and then here I'm going to put the URL of the website that will generate random images for me, and it's going to be the width and height of the image. Next thing is going to be another element, which is called fig caption, and then here you're going to put the text they want to be under the image or the caption. So all I'm going to write here is this image was generated with, and then I'm going to put the URL of the website. And so there we go. We can see the caption under the image. Moving on to the next thing, which allows you to edit any of your text elements. So I can delete this title or H1. I can set it to something else, so hello world, and so on. And this is done without any JavaScript or CSS. This is all done with one attribute. So to do this, I'm going to create an H1. I'm going to write some text like you can edit this H1, and this attribute is called content editable, and you can delete this part or set it to true. It's not really going to do anything. But now when we save this, we can see that when I click the H1, we can change it to anything else. We can delete all of it even like this. And this attribute also works with other text elements like paragraphs. So I'm just going to set this to gibberish, add this, and same thing's going to happen here. Moving on to the last HTML tip, which is actually my favorite, and it's how to add a title tooltip. So if you hover certain elements which have it, you'll see this kind of like this gray pop-up show up with some more text. So when we hover this paragraph, we see this text, and then same thing with the H1. So this is actually really easy to do, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So let's create an H1 first. I'm going to write hover me for a surprise. I'm going to actually capitalize all of this, and to actually add the title tooltip, we're going to add an attribute, which is going to be called title. And here I'm going to write this is an H1 element. And so when we save it, this is obviously a normal H1, but when we hover it, we can see this tooltip show up under it. And now moving on to CSS, the first thing that I'm going to show you is how you can change your cursors. So right now this is going to be the default one, and once we hover different H1s, it's going to change. So the first one is going to be move, and so now we can see the cursor change to another cursor, which is called move. The next one is help, so now we can see this question mark at the very bottom right. And then for none, it's going to be set to invisible, or it's going to disappear, because in this case, we're not going to have a cursor. And then the next one is going to be pointer. So this is the name of the value for all of them. And so for a pointer, you would basically set this to when you hover buttons and other things like that. Now to actually change the cursor value or the cursor, what you're going to do is write cursor, and then here I actually put the name of the values to set them to the right cursor that I want to. So it's going to be pretty easy in this case. So pointer is going to be the first one. Now these are not going to work because we have to set them. The next one is going to be set to none. So it's going to disappear when we hover the H1. The next one is going to be help. So I'm going to write cursor and then help. And now we're going to see the question mark. And the last one is going to be move. So I'm going to set the value here to move. And so now we can see that the cursor changed again. Moving on to the next thing, which is how you can create a letter drop cap with CSS. So this is going to be all my HTML. I have an H1, a paragraph with a special class, and some text. Let's go to our CSS class. And what we're going to do is select the paragraph with this class. So Class is Dropcap paragraph. And now we're actually going to select the first letter of the paragraph, and I'm going to paste in the styles. So first thing that I'm going to do here is actually change the font size so that it would be bigger. The next thing is we have to set this to float left so that it would be at the very left of our paragraph, so like this. And then we're changing the line height so that we would have some text under the letter drop cap, and it basically wouldn't look like this. And then the last thing is just changing the color of your letter, and you can set this to whatever you want. It doesn't matter. It's just the color that's going to be different. And now moving on to the last CSS tip I'm going to show you is how you can create two sorts of shadows. The first one's going to be text shadow, and then the second one is going to be box shadow. Let's go to our CSS file, and I'm going to select the H1 first. So the shadow for this one is going to be called text shadow, so the second option. And now I'm going to just set the values, and I'm going to tell you what all of them do. I'm going to set this to, let's do this one, but I want to change this a bit, so make this a bit darker. Something like this should work. So the first value is basically going to change the x-axis of your shadow. So right now it's going to be set to 2, and if I set this to 10, now we're going to see that it moved to the right. And if I set this to 2, or sorry, let's set this back to 6, it's going to move a bit to the left because it's lower than 10. And if we set this to negative, it's going to move to the left. So now the H right here, instead of being to the right, it's going to be to the left. So let's set this back to 2 pixels. And if you haven't guessed already, this one's going to be for the y-axis. So if we set this to 4, or let's set this to 10 actually, we're going to see that it's going to move down. I'm going to set this to 6, and then if we set this to -6, it's going to go up. Set this back to 2 pixels, and so for this one's kind of like the clarity of the shadow. So right now it's going to be set to 2 pixels, and we can see it clear. If we set this to 6 pixels now, we're going to see that the clarity is not going to be as good as before. If we set this to 10, we're barely going to see the shadow, and so the higher we set the value to, the less we're going to see the shadow. And so we can set this to 1, and we're going to see it really well. But a good value for this one's going to be around 4, so that we can kind of see the text, but we can also see the shadow. Now moving on to the button, so I'm going to select it. It's going to work the same way, but it's going to be called differently. So this one's going to be called box shadow. And we can basically copy all of this. Like I said before, it works the same way. But then for this one, you would usually set it to black. So basically this. And we can set this to something a bit bigger. So 4, 4. And the clarity, let's set this to 6. And now moving on to the first but really helpful JavaScript tip, which is going to be how you can round numbers and remove a certain amount of decimals after the number. So in this case, we have a whole number with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 decimals. And we can see that the first log is going to give us the number with 2 decimals, and then the next one's going to be with 4. And in this one, we can see that it actually rounded it to 1.5 instead of 1.4. So to do this, after the number, you're going to write 2 fixed, and then you're going to write the amount of decimals that you want the number to have. So we have 6 decimals here, and let's say you wanted to have 3 decimals, then you would write 3. And now we're going to see that it's going to be 2.618 instead of this, so 2.61847. And now moving on to how you can actually round math.random numbers. So we can see that it's not going to be something like 0 point something something something. So to do this, what we're going to do is actually, I'm going to cut this, and I'm going to write math dot, instead of random, it's going to be floor. So we're basically rounding it, and here we're going to write 1 times the max number that we want. So if you want the number to go from basically 1 to, let's say, 50, then we're going to write times 50. And so this can be the limit. So now we're going to see it's not going to go past 50. Now, if I set this to 150, now it's going to go past 50, but it's not going to go over 150. And now moving on to a kind of like a trick, but it's a cool thing to know, and it's how you can assign booleans without writing true or false in them. And this could actually be used in a real scenario. I'm going to create a variable, which is going to be a, and I'm going to just set this to 5. It doesn't really matter where it's going to be set to. But now we're going to create the Boolean variable, and we're going to set this to something like an if statement, right? So if a doesn't equal to 5, right? So when we actually log this, we're going to get false, right? So now we're going to get false because a actually equals to 5. So if we do this now, it's going to be set to true. And you can do a lot of different things with it. So if we do something like 0 doesn't equal to 0, then it's going to be false. And you can play around, and if you know how to do this really well, then this might be really helpful in different scenarios. And so this is going to be for this video, so I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, then leave a like, sub to the channel for more content like this. Leave a comment down below if you have any video requests, and hopefully see you next video.